Hello, pen friends. Welcome to another episode of Currently Inked. I'm glad to have you back for another episode here. And we got some good questions, got some fun pens, got some pretty inks. So it's a good day. What can I say? So I thought I'd start off with the mailbag, show you some of the new stuff that's shown up at my door recently. One in particular is this little item here. This I got from Ron at Pen Chalet. He sent this over for review. I'm going to be doing a fuller review of it a little bit later on, but I wanted to kind of show it off to you since reviews aren't coming out for a while still. This is a leather pen sleeve, and I got the 2-pen sleeve here in the brown leather. You can get different color threads. I got the brown leather with the brown threads. Some people really like contrasting threads, but when it comes to leather, I kind of like the threads to blend in. I haven't used this yet, so it's still a little stiff, but it looks, the construction quality is really high. They've left the edges raw. It's a 2-pen slot, and yeah, so I'm going to be throwing some pens in here and taking this with me, carrying it with me to work. I generally like leather goods for my pens. I like how they kind of age and patina over time, but this is cool. So at penchalet.com, he sent this over to me. So this is the Dee Charles 2-pen pen sleeve. So keep an eye out for a full review of that, or head over to Pen Chalet and check them out. There's a bunch of colors over there. So in any case, so things have been a little quieter in my life of late. Fortunately, I've finally been able to get back to my garden. I put in a huge garden this year. It's almost 3,000 square feet in total. And I'm having a very difficult time staying on top of it. In fact, I am absolutely, without question, failing to stay on top of it. It's a disaster area right now. So I've been taking some extra time now that things have settled down a little bit to get out there and weed and water. We haven't had rain here in almost 6-7 weeks, which is very unusual for us. We often get rain much more frequently than that. So, but the temperatures have been great. It's been nice and sunny, and my whole yard's in bloom. That's been really fun. So it's a cooler day today, so I can sit in the studio for a couple of hours and record some videos, and that's why I'm here. So let's dive into the questions. This first question comes from Sierran in Dorset, who says, as a musician, do you have any favorite music-inspired pens, like the Mont Blanc Miles Davis, or do you have any suggestions for such a pen to be made? So, it's interesting. I realized lately that I've kind of got this theory that's been developing around the inspiration of pens. I'm finding the more and more that I spend time with pens, the less and less I enjoy pens that are inspired by something. Because what often happens in cases like that is that they get way too in your face about it. There's Montegrappa is probably the biggest offender of this. They have some of the gaudiest pens on the market, inspired by pirates. If you just type in Montegrappa pirate pen, you'll see what I talk about. The Miles Davis is another one. I was a trumpet player in high school. I like Miles Davis. I don't like that pen. It's too in your face. It's too like the trumpet keys and it's too much for me. On the other hand, I don't really like pens that, like, I think of the Visconti Saturno, which they're like, it's inspired by Saturn, but you wouldn't know that without all of their marketing material telling you that that's what it was inspired by. So whenever a pen says it's inspired by something instead of just being pretty, then I start to get a little eye-rolly about the whole thing. So off the top of my head, I can't think of any music-inspired pens that exist on the market that I really love. I do, however, have an interesting example to show you. Now, most people know that, if you've been watching my videos for a while, that I am a huge Muppets fan. In fact, you can't see them, but just above my head, right here, I've got a Kermit doll, a Gonzo doll, and a Fozzie doll, and I've got a little animal antenna topper right here. I love the Muppets, and I have for a long time. Jim Henson's one of my heroes. And so I recently had Renee from Scriptorium Pens make a custom pen for me, and here it is. This is an Idol, and I'm covering the end here for a second. This is made from Conway Stewart evergreen acrylic, which is just a beautiful material. I really like it a lot. But I had this custom roll stopper made here out of bronze. And this is the first 7 notes of the musical phrase, "It's Not Easy Being Green," which is one of my all-time favorite songs, sung by Kermit. It's not easy being green, that sort of thing. And I actually wrote out the staff. I designed this myself and then sent it off to Renee's silversmith, and he 3D printed it and then cast it in metal. And I love it. I love it, love it, love it. So that's probably as far as I would go with a pen that is inspired by music. I would say if you're looking for a music-inspired pen that is something other than like beat you over the head with the theme, you're probably going to have to look at doing it yourself. And I would look at finding a pen that speaks to a specific song or a specific instrument, something that's very specific to you, and then tread lightly with the allusions to that thing. Don't go over the top with it, because then it becomes almost cartoony in its attribution. So just a few thoughts on that from me. Brent in Kansas asks, if you were not allowed to use fountain pens, what would your ballpoint choice be? I actually can't tell you because I just don't use ballpoints, so I don't have enough knowledge to pick one. Right now, when it comes to ballpoints, the only time I ever use them is when I'm signing receipts. So, sorry, I just don't use them, so I can't answer that question in any sort of knowledgeable way. George in Washington, D.C. asks, have you tried the titanium nib on the Karas Kustoms? What did you think? I like my fine nib, though it's dry, suffers from skips and dry starts, and I'm reticent to tune titanium. I wonder whether or not to buy another one or stop while I'm ahead. So I have had admittedly mixed results with titanium nibs. I'm not a fan personally of titanium nibs in general. I don't like the feel of the bounciness, and my general experience is that titanium nibs are quite a bit more complicated to properly adjust. So my take is, unless I'm going to be buying it from someone who I know can tune the nib, or I know I'm going to be taking that titanium nib to a nibmeister, I generally avoid them. I think I just personally prefer to have a steel nib myself. What I would say is, if you really like the feel of the titanium nib, give another one a try, because I know a lot of people really have had good luck with those titanium nibs. The titanium nib on Karas Kustoms is a Bock nib. In fact, as far as I know, Bock is the only manufacturer that makes titanium nibs. And they make titanium nib. All the titanium nibs that are out there are made by Bock. So the T-Flex nibs on stipulas are Bock nibs. You can buy the Titan nibs, which are all titanium for Bock, and they've got the standard screw-in units. So if you like titanium, give another one a try. Or send your pen off to a nibmeister. I mean, it's probably cheaper to send it off to a nibmeister and have them work on it than it would be to get a new titanium nib. Might be about the same, but, it could be wasteful. So, if you're going to consider buying another one, you might as well just send the one you have off to a nibmeister and have them tune it up for you. So, I'm not a huge fan of titanium nibs, but I know a lot of people are. So I think you're going to kind of have to go with your gut on that one. All right, in terms of what I've got inked up at the moment, here's another one of the pens that I haven't had a chance to use and inked up just recently. This is an Omas Paragon, and this is in the very well-known and not super easy to find green Arco, or Arco Verde, I think it's called, something like that. I don't know the 100% proper term. I've had this pen for a while now. I bought it in Los Angeles at the DC or at the LA show in 2016, I believe, and I really like the pen a lot. I'm a big fan of some of these Omases. The materials are great. I don't love how this doesn't line up perfectly. The Arco doesn't line up 100% perfectly here. We can get pretty close, but piston filler, really nice pen, hard to find, increasingly expensive now that Omas has gone out of business. I'm getting ready to start a review on this, so that is going to be coming up as well. And I currently have it inked with Kobe ink. This is Sailor Kobe number 48, Water Source Marsh. So really pretty ink. I like it written more than I like it swatched, but the swatching, especially right around here, you can see has a nice kind of halo of a purpley color around the edge, which I think shows up a little bit better in the writing than it does in the on the swatch, but you can get the sense of it there. So really pretty ink. I like it quite a bit. Kobe inks can be a little tricky to find. Here in the US, I think the only retailer that carries them with any sort of regularity is Van Ness pens at vanness1938.com. This next question comes from Tristan in Singapore, who asks, how would I increase the ink flow on a Pelikan nib unit since you can't remove the nib from the feed? So for starters, you actually can remove the nib from the feed. I don't know how it's done, but I have seen it done. When I had my Pelikan M1000 ground to a cursive italic, the nib meister who did the work took the nib and feed apart. So I know it's doable. I just don't remember how it's done. What I would say is if you feel like you need to take it apart, go online. I'm sure there's some tutorials or some suggestions out there from some of the various communities on how that would be done. What I would tell you is you probably don't need to, though. The thing about adjusting nibs is while it can be easier to adjust a nib outside of the feed, it's not necessary. And probably 2/3 of the time I work on my own pens, I end up not taking the nib and feed apart. It's just easier. So the way you would do that is use a brass shim to spread the tines a little bit, even with it still on the nib and feed. It's a little trickier. You can't get as deep into the nib slit as you would normally, so you're going to have to be careful to try not to rock just the tips out, but to try to open up the whole slit and then bring the tip back together. The other thing that you could do is just grab the shoulders with your, pinch the shoulders and try to pull them apart as best you can. It may take a little bit more time, but it's easier to do that without having to reset the nib and feed afterwards. It's not easier, it's just another way of doing it. So if you don't want to figure out how to take the nib and feed apart, don't bother with it and just try those things anyway. Samantha asks, is late winter or early spring your least favorite thing about the Pacific Northwest? It's up there. It's real high on that list. So I moved into the greater Seattle area just a little over 10 years ago, and I've been here ever since, and I love it here. This feels more like home than any place I've ever lived. I was born in Utah, grew up in Michigan, went back to Utah for many years, traveled all around the country and the world as a performer, then came back to Utah again, where I stayed until I moved here. My move up to Seattle was my 26th move in 13 years, and I bought my house just a little over 4 years ago and really love it here. So there's some things I really like about the Pacific Northwest and some things I don't like about it. Some of the things I like to start off with, it's gorgeous. Our weather is very mild year-round. We don't have huge swings. It doesn't get super cold. It doesn't get super hot. I grew up in Michigan and Utah, so I've seen enough snow to last me several lifetimes, and I think it snowed 3 or 4 times in the 10 years I've lived here, which is A-okay with me. I don't even own a snow shovel. I think this is one of the prettiest areas. There's tons of water around, and I love being on the water, being by the water. So yeah, I really, really like this area. There are a few things I don't love about it. The winter and early spring weather is high up there, and people think that Seattle gets a ton of rain, and we get a decent amount of rain. But what happens is that the clouds roll in and it stays gray and drizzly for about 7 or 8 months out of the year. And sometimes it doesn't bother me so much, and sometimes it really wears on me. And this last year was really bad because our winter and early spring lasted much longer than it normally does. And so, I was just, please let me see the sun. Things didn't start growing, stayed cooler much longer. So that's a struggle for me. I like to see the sun. I like to have it light. I like natural light. I grow things. I'm a gardener, and I have an orchid collection. And so I like light, and it can get pretty dreary here. So I usually try to go on vacation around the February, March timeframe when it's gross here and nice in other places. And then during the summer, when it's really hot and either humid or super dry in other places, my family and friends all come to Seattle because that's That's the best thing about it. Some of the other things I don't like about this area, there's something that is nicknamed or called the Seattle freeze. And the way I put it is people here are friendly, but they're not nice. So people here are, they're very friendly and they'll talk to you and smile at you and things like that. But no one's really interested in forming friendships or relationships beyond whatever small group they've already got. People don't go out and do things a lot here. I don't know that maybe a handful of times, probably fewer than 10 times in the last 10 years, have my coworkers gone out for drinks after work, or, people just don't seem to get together with their friends and do stuff very much here. I don't know, maybe it's just me and my oh so abrasive personality, but it's not, if you go on Google and search for Seattle freeze, there's article after article after article about it. So I think there is some truth to the fact that I think it's a thing here. People here are also very passive aggressive, and there are times where I prefer the bluntness of just plain aggression, and a lot of the passive aggressive stuff just kind of rubs me the wrong way. There's also a bit of a nanny state thing going on, especially in Seattle proper. I don't live in the city of Seattle. I live in one of the outlying suburbs. So I get less of it, but things like, we're not going to allow you to use trans fats, and we're going to tax all sodas over 8 ounces, and blah, 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 blah. It's just like, there's a big aspect of local government here about we're trying to protect the people from themselves. That drives me a little crazy. It's not a huge deal for me, but that is something that I'm not a huge fan of. So anyway, all that being said, I really love this area. And the only other thing that's missing is a freaking pen show. So if anyone out there wants to sponsor a pen show, call me, email me, let's get in touch. Let's make it happen. We can do it in July when it's going to be like today. It's middle of July when I'm recording this. It was 74 degrees and sunny from 6:30 in the morning until 9:30 at night. It's gorgeous here. This is the place to be to do a pen show in July. So let's do a July show here in Seattle. There's lots of really nice hotels. We can do it near Pike Place Market. It'll be fun. Lots of good places to eat. So if you want to do a pen show, call me. I'll help you organize it. We got a pen posse here that'll help. It'll be awesome. Got to get me a pen show. That's what I want up here. All right. PenCon, Seattle PenCon. Let's make it happen for next year. All right, one last question to wrap up this episode, and this one is from Diego, who is in Honduras. So I believe this is the first email I've gotten from Honduras. And Diego says, I know you're a Tomoe River paper guy, but I have a problem. I own several pens. Most are on the cheaper side of this hobby spectrum, but I've worked hard to tune my pens so that they are very smooth on Rhodia paper, really smooth. But when I use my pens on Tomoe paper, I get more feedback than I want. I tried to smooth my nibs so my pens feel as smooth in Tomoe paper as they feel in Rhodia, and so far I can't get them to that point. My question is that even possible? Can I get my pens to feel that smooth on Tomoe River paper without damaging my tipping? Should I smooth my pens with 1 micron and 0.3 micron to get to that point, or use the 12,000 grit? So one of the things about Rhodia paper is that it is coated with what they call a hard coating. It's the paper itself is very slick. So a lot of times you don't have to do as much to get a smooth experience on Rhodia paper because the Rhodia paper is very slick. Another paper that I think you will find behaves very similar to Rhodia paper is Apica paper, which is very, very nice paper, but again, very hard-coated, very slick paper. Tomoe River paper has more of what I would call a velvety texture. It has a little bit more of velvety texture, and it doesn't have that really glossy, hard surface that you're used to on Rhodia paper. Now, what I would tell you is, I don't know that it will ever be possible to get the exact same feel on both papers because they're different papers. And if you tune it to the feel on one paper, you're going to possibly screw it up for the other. So the goal as you're tuning your nibs is to find the best middle ground you can and then use the paper you like most with that pen. The Tomoe River paper, the thing that might help a little bit on Tomoe River is increasing the ink flow of your pen a little bit. Additional ink will help lubricate that friction between the paper and the nib point, but I wouldn't necessarily tune just for Tomoe River paper. And the thing is, if you don't like the way your pens feel on Tomoe River, don't use it. Go ahead and use Rhodia, use Leuchtturm, use Apica, use Clairefontaine, use those papers with the hard, very glossy, slick coating, and you'll get that feeling that you like so much. I prefer Tomoe River to those a little bit just because as I start to use my pens more and get more and more familiar with them, I like that, the terminology I use is that butter on hot glass feel, but there are times where it's too slick and I get hard starts or skips on that paper, where on Tomoe River I don't. I like that velvety feel on Tomoe River quite a bit. So hopefully that will help a little bit. I'm sorry I can't give you the exact answer, but what I will tell you is I wouldn't try to get your paper or your pen to write exactly the same on all paper. That's like trying to get your pen to write exactly the same with every ink. It's not really possible. So get it to the closest that you like, and then pick the papers that you use that get you to the feeling you like the most. So that should do it for this episode. Thank you so much for joining me. I do appreciate it. And we'll have more episodes coming up here shortly. A lot more questions to go through, a lot more pens to take a look at. And don't forget to check out the show notes over at penhabit.com, as well as some of the new ink reviews that I'm going to be having come out on penhabit.com. I've got some really great reviewers who are doing some good work, taking great photos for us. So if you're into ink reviews, head over to penhabit.com and check some of those out as well. And I will see you here on another Currently Inked soon. Take care.